Hey, Mr. Majewski, good timing. I just hit the record button, so we just started the recording of the video here. Welcome for joining us today. Typical thing that we want to make sure we're doing today is we're going to talk about a certain theme, but if anything comes up that you want to, then feel free to do so. One of the things that one of the themes that I wanted to work on is the question of it's time to change the question. Is what I've titled it. I talked about it on our discussion board. If you had a chance to look at that, just trying to put out the idea about what do we need to do as math teachers so that we can change the direction of our math interest. One of the things that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you all see it, and we hear about it, complain about all the time, is that about how boring math is inherently. A lot of people would disagree with math professionals about how boring math would be. This is why we have such a relatively low level of engagement in comparison to other subjects. And I tend to agree with them. That math, the way that we go about it in a lot of different ways, is a pretty boring story. I mean, a boring subject. It's because we don't tell stories. There's, in English, there's, both nonfiction and fictional stories with character development, and there's plot twists and cliffhangers. There's all these wonderful things that can catch your attention. In history, it's the same thing, but hopefully it's all nonfiction. It doesn't always work out that way. But there's stories, there's heroes, there's villains, there's things that catch your attention. It doesn't really work that way in math. There's logic and there's reasoning, and there's always this right way and wrong way to do something, and it's predictive. Whether students always see it that way or not, it's definitely predictive, and unfortunately, it's really redundant. We do a lot of repetition of the same skills just so that way we can learn and master skills, but it ends up being something that we do over and over again. And so with that in mind, what can we do as teachers that can address engagement? What can we do that can make it more interesting so that way maybe we can catch more attention? Because in my opinion, that's the root of it all. I think interest drives learning. We always talk about teachers make the worst make the worst students. And that's true in all professional developments, is that teachers typically zone out the minute that we start professional development. And it's because we're not interested in half the things that they have to tell us because it doesn't really relate to us. It doesn't apply to us. We're talking too generalized of a topic at that time. And it's something that we always tune out. And so why are we so quick to judge a student for wanting to tune us out when we are doing the same thing because we're not being addressed in an entertaining way? So I guess the main question for today is, what can we do to make it something that we can catch their attention again? So at that point, I'll ask you, do you all have any ideas first? And then I can show you some of the things that I've thought about. So what do you think?
All right, so I did something very fun, I thought, last week. In pre-cal, we were learning about vectors. And so I brought my Nintendo Wii game and I hooked it up to the projector, and we played Wii Golf. And that, to the students, they had a lot of fun with that because I don't know if you've ever played Wii Golf. It shows you your path that your golf ball is going to go in. And then it also shows you the arrow at which the wind is blowing. And so I was able to draw on the board while the game was going. I was able to freeze the screen and say, okay, here's your path of the ball. Here's your vector with the wind pushing the ball. And so I was teaching them how the vector affects the path, or I guess the direction that your ball or whatever object is going. And then from there, because we had to move on to the lesson, but they got a chance to play and, they got all excited about it. They're telling their friends, move it to the left, move it to the right, try to figure out how to aim it. But then, after playing a few rounds of that, we went to our lesson. And so we were able to then apply that to a different application. And it's the same types of problems that we get in the book. Somebody hits the ball and there's a wind. So they were still seeing the same type of problem, but now they could go back and say, oh yeah, the wind was pushing it this way. And so they could determine where that resultant vector was going to be. Whereas if I hadn't done that, I don't know if they would have been able to pick up as quick. I mean, still, we did that last week. I mean, this week we're back to, we're still doing vectors and they're not as excited, but at least for a day, there was some kind of excitement. And then we did the notes and they were in a better mood. But it is hard sometimes to find those ideas and actually do them and finding time. I had to come on a Sunday, set up the Wii. I had to figure out how to make all that work. But I wish I could do that more often. I know NCTM has a little game for younger audiences on teaching them about vectors. So I don't know if maybe it's something, maybe we can just let the kids play a game, maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes, because there are a lot of math games. And yes, it's really not, it's just a game. You still have to plug and chug, but at least they're just playing something. I don't know if that would change anything, just to maybe lighten the mood, but it's hard to find something because a lot of times they don't have the full application. They don't know the full knowledge to do some of those higher things once we get to physics, all that is math, but you're actually applying it. And math is just, here's just the basics. This is how you do it. And then it's not until you get to the sciences, I feel sometimes that they actually get to see the use for all this. But that's what I got to do, something I came up with. But I don't know if anybody else has any ideas. It's nice to share.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. You're touching on something that's actually got an educational theory behind it. It's called game-based learning. There's a lot of opportunities for education to be distributed through games. There's a huge movement at the elementary level about Minecraft being an educational game. I don't see how we can use it really at the high school level at this stage right now, but I've never played Minecraft, so I wouldn't know. But you're definitely on to the idea about game-based learning. There's a lot to be done with that. I think you're right. I mean, it needs to be something that we can. There's no reason why we can't find a way to have a game to get them excited at least about the idea of what they're going to do. Because it's an excellent starting point for being able to learn it. Somebody, I can't remember who said it, but the best approach to teaching is teach in the middle. To catch their attention first, then they realize that they don't know what they need to know. That's when you can teach the notes and the instructional side of things, because then that's when they're going to be more inclined to want to learn it because they can see why they need it, and then they go back to practice that skill afterwards. That's awesome that you got to play Wii. I'm jealous. Sarah, do you have anything that you can add to that? Is there anything that you've been able to do? That's okay. Not many people can beat Wii.
This week we're doing for geometry. I don't know if either of you teach geometry.
I do.
There's a performance. You do okay. There's a performance task with the curriculum where the students have to build a facility to play sports. With all the construction, just about every school is going under some type of construction. So we're actually starting this tomorrow. This is going to be part of their test grade, is to come up with a building, and it has to be a composite. And they have to show all dimensions. They have to be able to show how they're going to be used. It's got to have a multi-purpose. So, maybe one part of the building can be used for soccer practice, and the other part of the building can be used for football, or however that works. And then we end up picking which one's the best. And so we feel that they're going to be competing against each other to see who has the best building and what it looks like with all the little requirements. They have to meet a certain amount of square feet and also a certain amount of volume. But they're all working, and I know they'll get excited on, what does your building look like? What does yours look like? At least we're hoping, but they're still doing the work. We're just changing it up. Instead of giving them just, we're still going to do a paper test where it's multiple choice, but it'll be half of their grade as to, can you come up with it? Can you draw it? Because you're supposed to show a top view and a side view. And they have to show their calculations and they have to do 3 different dimension changes too, because with it, we're doing change in dimensions. But then they have to argue as to which one's the best, which one will save the school money. So then they're going into cost of square footage. So on that way, they're having a little bit of fun. coming up with these pictures, and I'm sure they'll come up with some crazy, weird looking shapes. But they're also doing the work, and we can see everything they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good use of the. It's amazing what competition can do to some of these kids. The ability to put them into some kind of competitive mode is fantastic to be able to get those internally competitive kids who always want to be the best, to be able to get them to be engaged in what's going on. Reading what you wrote here, Sarah. Yeah, it's been a while since I've had to do a Star Blitz, but I remember that, like, the different board games and the different ways that you can change the game each time you do it is, yeah, I totally agree. Why isn't there an ability to do something like that all year round? I mean, if you played the same game all year, I totally would understand why that would get boring to the kids, but I mean, it's so easy to change that stuff. I mean, you have different card groupings for the different, domains that you're supposed to be teaching. I totally agree. I have no idea why that would be so frowned upon. I think, in a way, there's a lot of educators who would be afraid of what it might be, that we think we're taking this big risk to that maybe we won't be reaching the kids, but it's there's no reason in my opinion, that we cannot be trying to increase the engagement level across the board that way. And I'm hearing in the back of my head, and I don't know about you guys, but I hear in the back of my head all the times, and you know who they are on your campus, the grumpy teachers, the grumpy teachers who are always saying things like, school's not supposed to be fun, and it's not supposed to be. I'm not here to entertain them and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, why aren't you? It's not supposed to be. If the entire world was boring, then why are you so upset at your job that you want to do this? This way, that you're intentionally trying to make things not be something that they can be entertained by. Everybody is happier when they are in an entertaining place. I mean, we just need to change our mind frame in some cases about that, because it's kind of silly to me that we would take the approach of, well, we should treat it like a job. It's like, well, look at your job. Your job is to be just surrounded by people who interact with you on a daily basis. There's a reason why you're here. Sorry, that's a different rant for a different day about teacher perspective. But one of the things that I wanted to show is that something that I used to read a lot of Dan Meyer. I still do from time to time, but I was really into his 3-act math idea. I don't know if you've heard of 3-act math, but try to get it as simple as possible. Math problems can be asked just like a movie. We need an introduction that catches your attention. We need character development or plot twists that are built into it, and we need to have cliffhangers. We need to catch them on their seat of their toes, on the seat of the tail of their seat, so that way we can try to make them be interested in what the answer is. It doesn't have to be real world. It doesn't have to be a real world application of anything at all. It doesn't have to be anything about the fake world. It just needs to be something that can catch their attention. At this point, I'm going to try to show you my screen here, and I'm going to show you one of the examples of something that I just did just recently, because we were talking about surface area and volume and geometry. Let me switch over to my desktop here. Make sure I do this right. Okay, can you see my desktop here? Is it showing up here?
No, it's not showing the desktop.
Okay, hold on. Let me try it again. All right, is it there now? This thing's always weird. I don't ever know if it's working or not, because I can't see it from your end. Can you see my desktop here? Can you see this website that I'm trying to show? I got to check to make sure. Okay, good deal. All right. This website's called 101 Questions. It was developed by Dan Meyer. 101qs.com. It takes you all of 30 seconds to sign in or to make an account for it. And it is basically just math questions built into this 3-act math concept here. The other day, we were talking lateral or surface area and volume, and so I went to this website and I did a search. I want to show you what the search looks like. So I type in search, the word surface area. I wanted high school, 9 through 12, and I wanted a lesson plan that goes with it. And I have all of these options of things that have already been created for me. And I did one over toilet paper rolls. And it was literally just a guy tearing toilet paper rolls off, or sheets of toilet paper, and asking at the end here, how many pieces of toilet paper were on this entire roll that I started with. And it came with pictures of measurements that are the different things, so that way you can know the radius of the toilet paper roll, that you can calculate circumference, calculate volume, surface area, all the different formulas that you need. And then finally at the end, there's Act 3, that's your conclusion, and it shows exactly how many it is. Now, I did this in a very conniving and evil, twisted way. The principle behind this that Dan Meyer puts forth is that never volunteer information. Let kids try to solve the problem until they realize they don't know everything they need to know. And then once they ask for it, then you can show them the information, because that shows them the connection between useful information in a word problem and things that I can use to be able to apply in a formula. So I didn't tell them how big the initial sheet of toilet paper was. They had to ask for it, and then I showed them the picture of the dimensions. I didn't show them how big the roll was to start off with. I made them ask for it, and then I showed them the picture of it, of the actual dimensions of the roll. And then from there, they calculated the surface area, and I made them come up with answers. And amazingly, a lot of the kids got very, very close. It ended up being 94 sheets of toilet paper, and I had a lot of kids guess 92 or 93 when it was all said and done. In fact, the only person who got it right was my on-level geometry class. They got it correct, and my pre-AP were all slightly off, which I thought was amazing. But I did this on a Friday. That was what I did the entire class period on Friday. And the last 3 minutes of class, I started to show them that final video so they can see what the answer is. And then I paused it and said, now you have to wait till Monday. And it was amazing to see how frustrated and how upset I just made 30 kids in the class. Kids who had no interest at all about math. They don't care about surface area. How do you really apply that to the real world in a lot of ways that a lot of these kids are going to think is actually even something they care about? And I made them care about what that answer was, which to me, that's quality education, is the minute to where I catch you wanting to know the answer to a math problem, and making them have to wait until Monday. And then there wasn't a kid who walked through that door on Monday who wasn't asking them, how many sheets was it? How many sheets was it? Over and over again. And so it was a chance for me to, let me get off the desktop here. I don't need that anymore. I don't know how to stop it though either. Hold on. Okay, there we go. It was a chance for me to just basically you really drive engagement up and hopefully in a meaningful way. And then from there, I build on the surface area and volume unit to be able to use that information to be able to build another question. In a couple of days, I'm going to ask them another one straight off that list, because 101 questions, if you've not been there, is amazing. It's got so many resources for 3-Act Math on it. If you've not done so before, please read up on 3-Act Math on Dan Meyer. Let me see if I can give you the website for it here. This website here. Let me post it for you. And then the 101 questions is this right here. If you go onto the Dan Meyer's website, he's got an entire blog series posted about 3-Act Math, trying to dedicate to it to be able to use it. But then he created that website so that way people can make their own 3-Act Math problems. And some of them are good, some of them are really bad. I mean, it's it's amateur work, and so you get some really good things off of it if you can find it, or some things you can't. But it's applicable to algebra, to geometry, to pre-cal. I mean, it goes up through calculus on some of the things that they ask about. You just have to make a good search about what you're looking for. And I always say it includes lesson, so that way I can see their work at the end, because sometimes I don't know the answer. I don't know what the answer is even supposed to be, so I couldn't even pretend to get started with that with the kids if I have no idea what I'm doing. But just for instance, that toilet paper roll one, that took me 15 minutes of planning, because it's just showing a video. It's completely paperless on my end. And I read the lesson plan about what he was trying to accomplish out of it. I saw that it directly applied to surface area of a prism, to surface area of cylinders, which is exactly what I was teaching the day before that. So that was me trying to teach the middle idea. But that's just one resource that's available to us. There are several others that are around that I could spend all day on it, but I don't want to waste all your time with it. But I think that needs to be essential in the growth of CCISD. Even we need to change how we're asking questions. Bottom line, if we really want to see STAR scores go up, then we need to make the kids think that the STAR test is important. Well, they're never going to find that test very important outside of we need to go to college. We need some other motivator for them to learn it, because the big picture, they're teenagers. They don't think big picture. That's why they have tattoos at age of 16. They're not thinking big picture, not thinking long-term plans. They're thinking about the here and now. So I need something daily to catch them on the here and now. And I think that with all the bright minds that we've got in this district, if we can embrace that concept, we could really put together some really good things. But it would take practice and it would take teamwork in order to get there. And we have to get out of our mind frame that, our answer is going to be found in a better worksheet, because it's just not there. That's not how you're going to teach them. That's how absolutely you should practice a skill in a lot of different ways. But we're never going to teach that concept through this traditional approach, because the kids we're losing them. At least they are on our campus. I can't speak for your campus, but that's how it shows for us.
I think I wanted to add, like you said earlier, I think a lot of teachers are afraid that time-wise, curriculum-wise, I'm supposed to be at chapter this by this date, because I loved that idea. That's interesting. I'm going to have to look up the toilet paper idea. But then when you said, as you were talking about it, I'm thinking, well, how long did that take? Did you use up a whole class period for them to explore that? Because we're thinking, okay, we've got to get through prisms and cylinders one day. We have to get through pyramids and cones the next day, and so on. And I think that's not just me, but everybody, how much time is it going to take? And I think that's one reason why we kind of shy away from that, even though I'd love to do more of those, I would. But maybe, and I know they started doing, like, that's what the performance tests are to do, to kind of help and change things up a bit. But even with that, we're still hesitant to try it. Yeah. And it'd be nice, too, to have, like, when I see video recordings of other teachers and how they do their classes, and, it kind of gives me an idea, okay, this is how it'll flow, because I don't know how to approach it, maybe, or how is it going to look like. And I think that's another thing that we could probably look into, is just doing professional development of actually doing some of these together, and us acting as children. What would we do? What kind of things will come up? What can we expect also, how fast it'll go, and just to see different things too. Finding the time to find those. I didn't know that website existed, but I had heard about Dan Meyer's 3-act play. I've seen one before on Similarity, and I thought it was very interesting. But the big issue is, do we want to do it? I mean, because of those requirements that they have for us,
Right. And that's something that's very difficult to change from our perspective. That's going to have to be a top-down change. They want us to engage the kids more, but then they don't want us to have more time to be able to do it. That particular lesson about the toilet paper, that took me, that was a 25 to 30-minute block of my time. I spent some time reviewing some of the notes that we had covered the day before about surface area and volume. And then we did our warm-up, of course, and then that was about what I left for that. And I guess maybe if I was asked about that from an administrator role, how are you going to fit all this in? I guess the main counter I can go to that, and I can't sell anybody because I'm not positive it would be true, is that for starters, I already had 2 days booked for prisms and cylinders. That was already what I was going to do. So if I had a day to teach and a day to practice, then that would be how I'd go about it anyways, is that that's a chance for me to get some meaningful practice. Even if it's just one problem, they're seeing an application in a way that they're really going to try to understand this when it's all said and done. The second part of it would be, if my kid is bored in my class and he's not going to listen to what I have to say because he's so disengaged, because he's already thought in his mind, he's preconceived that geometry is boring to me, I don't get it, I don't understand it, I don't like it, I don't want to understand it, then what's he going to do on that test anyways? He's probably not going to do well, because when did he learn in the first place? Then I had to reteach it anyways. and then have to reassess it. I'm hopefully trying to avoid all these days in which I have to reteach and reassess, because maybe I can catch their attention just enough to where it'll sink in. They can see how that works, and then maybe they can apply it later on. I mean, that's the theory, at least. In practice, it's hard to do unless you're just unsure about whether or not it'll work, or whether or not it's going to work. I mean, and it takes some courage, and I think you're right. It's like there's always that worry about, well, what happens if this didn't work right? It's how are we going to make up the time for it? And that's tough. It's always going to be that delicate balance, especially if, I'm sure, Sarah, you had to deal with the STAR test. I mean, you've got so much material that you need to cover before you reach this test. But in my opinion, that says more about the fact that maybe we're testing too much than it is about the fact that our kids aren't learning it at that point. One of the things that I had to keep telling myself as a teacher is that it doesn't do me any good to complain about the teachers, or sorry, not complain about the teachers, to complain about the students about what they don't know. I have to teach the kids about where they are right now. If I have a kid who can't add and subtract, why on earth am I going to try to cover linear equations? It doesn't make any sense why I would try to do that. I have to teach the kid that I have and do the best I can to get that kid better off than where he left than when he got to my class. That may not, line up to what CCISD would say is the best thing for me to do, but at the end of the day, I have to feel like that's me doing the best service for that child. It's sometimes it doesn't always work, but I mean, it's my best attempt at it, I guess. And I wouldn't think that there's an administrator in the schools that can say that that's off the record the worst thing you could do for a kid is to teach to where they're at that point. But I'm not an administrator at this point in my career, so I can't speak for them either. Right? Yeah, you got to teach exactly the ones in front of you. It's so silly to think that we need to. I've got geometry kids who don't know a lick of Algebra 1, which part of me says, number one, why are they in my geometry class? And number two, what am I going to do about it? I can't sit here for 37 weeks and complain about that. I need to do something about it. Or else I'm going to spend 37 weeks of my life miserable. What good did that accomplish? So I guess at this point, we're going to try to start wrapping this up. Hopefully that website is something that we can be able to use, be a resource to try to find some interesting ways to engage kids. This is something we really have to think about. This is not a final closed book kind of question. There's an issue that we as educators have to address. We need to change our questioning in some form or fashion, so that way we can ask the question that the students actually care about the answer to. Real world or not real world, there's different ways to look at it. Something that they're going to use in their life or not. I mean, that to me is irrelevant. The main question is, what way can I ask this that you actually want to care about the answer? So if you have any ideas about that, any kind of ways to approach that, please go to It's Learning. Go to our discussion board. There's a post on there about that specific topic. And hopefully we can try to help each other out about ways that we can address the curriculum in a way that would be meaningful and people shouldn't shy away from this word, and entertaining to our students, because entertainment will always be the key to engagement in some form or fashion. But any final comments from you all? Is there anything you'd like to add? Okay. Sarah's typing on the way for her. She's doing it the old school way here, AOL chat room style. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to put this on YouTube, on the CCISD page for that, and then it'll be put up on the It's Learning page as well, and then it'll be sent out to you all if you want to spread the word. We can try to get more people to show up. I'm hoping to do this next Tuesday. Let me think. I'm a baseball coach, so my schedule is what dictates a lot of this. I'm thinking next Tuesday will be a chance we try to do this again, probably right after tutorials, because that's I know when people are in their rooms. But thank you again for being here. Hopefully I will see you next week. Take care.